Has AI failed in its promises? Well, I think that that's a pretty big question to ask. Depending on who you ask the question to, they may say yes, it has, or they may say no, it hasn't. I've kind of been of the opinion of wait and see, right? Just taking information from the market, seeing some implementations here and there, looking at some feedback, and based off of what I've seen, it really hasn't had a implementation past ChatGPT that has reached quite the same amount of mainstream attention, right? Now I know I'm probably going to hear rumblings just because of that particular opinion, but I want to in particular address the feedback that some companies have had where they say, hey, look, we've tried to implement AI and we're not really seeing a return on our implementation. And I wanted to dissect that a bit and really look at why it is that some of these AI implementations fail, right? And I think you'd be surprised as to why it is the case that they don't work out. And that's why I want to delve into this video so that we can move beyond just the almost too simplistic question of has it failed or hasn't it failed, right? Because if I've learned anything from my interaction with you guys, is that the world of AI is a lot more complicated than I think we give it credit for. And it's very difficult to communicate about it in general terms. So I wanted to get a little bit more specific and detail why it is that some implementations can be successful and inversely why some implementations fail. So the first thing that I wanted to talk about today is that one of the reasons implementations fail, or at least my understanding of it is that there's a lack of familiarity with the tooling, right? So you know this if you're a software engineer or if you're just a problem solver in general. How well you know your tool as a problem solver oftentimes dictates how well you can solve problems, right? And an understanding of what kinds of problems that you can solve, right? So if you don't know your tool well, kind of, let's say, for example, like a particular programming language. If you don't know a particular programming language well, or the framework that it's associated with, then you're going to be very limited on the use cases that you can think of for that particular tool, right? And I think that this is actually a gap in the market where there's a lack of familiarity with these tools, and there's kind of a scramble to understand them. And because of that lack of understanding, it's very hard to implement them to their fullest potential, okay? So there's number one. Number two is that when these tools get implemented, and this is honestly probably a principle that can apply to many other things than just many other technologies than just AI. But another problem that I see is that the problem that the tool is trying to solve, in this case AI is trying to solve, isn't always clearly defined, right? And if you don't have, as an engineer, a clear definition of the problem that you're trying to solve, it's very difficult to articulate the questions that you have to ask in order to get to the precise solution that is being sought after, right? So poor problem articulation is essentially at the root of any bad implementation, right? You can start trying to solve for something, and if the problem's not there, then at the end of the day, a lot of that effort tends to be wasted, a lot of energy and time as well. Okay, so the third point to jump off of that is that sometimes there is a tendency to want to force fit AI as a technology when the problem that is at hand actually is not best suited for AI, right? And I think that pressure can occur because of marketing purposes, right? Everybody is in a scramble to say, hey, we use AI to do this or we use AI to do that. But in the rush to say that, and perhaps that desire to want to say that with validity, there can be a tendency to force fit AI as a solution in a situation where a more simple technology would be a better solution, right? So I think that that's part of the trap that has also occurred, where it was just a mad scramble and everybody's like, okay, where can we put AI? Where can we put AI? And there wasn't enough attention being put in saying, okay, is AI really the best tool that we can use for this particular problem, right? And I think it's so important to make that conclusion because this is a principle you can apply on a daily basis. Sometimes like for example, if you know you have to build a web application, you're not going to write the application in C++, right? In particular for the web. There's a specific tool that's best optimized for that ecosystem, right? And this could be the problem with AI, where it's like, let's say like C++ is like the new hot language. Everybody wants to use C++ for everything, right? And they'd say, hey, look, or the problem's been defined that comes down to, hey, you have to build a web application. If you're like, okay, C++ is super popular, let's use C++, and you start using C++ and you realize, oh man, like this is not the right technology. That's the problem that I think technicians and business people fall into. Okay, so then the last point here is I said there's actually two more. So then the other point here is that it's super important as a technician, whatever your background is that you have a degree of expertise in the AI, which is what we talked about, knowing your tool, but then also having a really good you don't have to be an expert, but definitely have a really good understanding of the business that you're seeking to implement that AI in, right? And I think that this is more so probably, I think it's true for other software, but the complexity of AI makes it even more so true here, where if you're trying to implement something successfully within, let's say, a business domain, right? Not a domain like online, but like the ecosystem that you're trying to implement it is within some sort of workflow for a particular business. It's really important for the developer or the engineer that's working on that project to definitely understand how it is that business works, how it is that business makes money, so that implementation could be accurately tailored to the solution that the business seeks, right? And you almost like limit yourself. Yeah, you almost limit yourself by just being too much on the engineering side and not really being business savvy enough to understand what it is that the business will value insofar as a solution. And insofar as the value part, so this is the part that I wanted to talk about because this is very important. I've seen a common thread among these different implementations that there is simply not a defined way to measure how the implementation went, right? So they can't, a lot of times I see these implementations, they go down, or at least from what I've seen on the internet, these implementations go down, and a clearly defined metric of value is not defined before the implementation occurs, so that when it occurs, people are confused as to what kind of value the AI is generating at all. So making those results measurable and quantifiable is super important, so that when the implementation goes down, both teams, both the engineering and business teams, have a great understanding or a solid understanding of, hey, did this work or did this not work, right? And any ambiguity in that space, and I know this is tough because it's engineering, but the higher level of ambiguity as to was this implementation successful, was this implementation not successful, is going to result in a confusion about the outcome of that implementation. And it could be that, hey, look, you implemented something and it was actually very successful. It was a successful implementation, but if there's no way to measure that impact, then it could be perceived actually as a bad implementation, as a crappy implementation, right? So it's super important to define those metrics. And I would agree, I would argue that that's just in general for software. And I know that that doesn't get done a lot, even in regular software development. But the better that you're able to measure the outcome of the software that you output, the solutions that you output, the easier it is to sell to your stakeholders. Hey, look, this worked, this is driving value. And the more smooth your interactions and collaborations are because of the metric that measures that value. Okay, so just in summary, this is what I wanted to finish this video with. It's super important to have a defined problem, a clearly defined problem. It's super important to be familiar with the tooling, really know the AI, the type of models that you work with, being knowledgeable about technical aspects, about the implementations, its capability, or the implementation, its capabilities, its limitations, stuff like that. And also, you want to have and then you don't want to force fit AI as a solution where it might not be the best fit. Okay, so that one's also really important. And then as an engineer, especially on the technical side, having a poor understanding of how the business works that you're working with or that you're seeking to implement a solution with is also a problem. And then not knowing or not setting up, taking preventative measures to set up a metric that will be able to evaluate the value of your implementation. So identify what that is. Maybe that could be probably something as simple as how much money did this make us, right? But not all businesses will value their implementations based on that, but that's just an idea, right? So making sure to set up a metric that will quantify the value of the implementation, all right? So I think if we as engineers, if we go down that list in general, and I think as time goes on, we'll probably discover more, but as we go down that list, and if we were to generally hit those points, we would see more successful implementations of the software, and we could actually get it to do, or of the technology, in this case AI, and we could actually level it up, right? Actually be able to implement solutions that are useful to businesses and solutions that make a difference. So if you found this video of value, I want you to first comment, because that's how I even came to this video, is the conversations I've been having with you guys. And if you want to support the channel, I have a patronage link down below. Sign up for $15 a month and you get to communicate with me on a regular basis, as well as participate in building the community for this channel. And if nothing else, if you found value, make sure to subscribe to the channel. And I'm trying to think, is there anything else? Did I say like it too? But yeah, I really appreciate you taking the time to watch the video. I will catch you guys on the next one. Peace.